Welcome to the Tabletop Empire. My name is Nate, and last year I started our very first actual play here on the channel called Dark Underworld. And while it did not reach the heights of the views that, Critical Role and Dimension 20 got, it was still pretty successful, and at this point, a little over a year later, the show has nearly 60,000 views, with it receiving consistent views to this day, and it's constantly growing. That number is going up. And as I am currently in the throes of preparing for our next actual play, which keep an eye out for some news coming soon, I'm super excited, and it's really hard to not announce anything yet. I thought it would be a fun time to maybe share some of the behind the scenes of what goes on to prepare for an actual play on this channel, and maybe that can help you find success if this is something you want to do. So in this video, I'm going to go through all of the things that I think need to happen for an actual play to be successful. Keep in mind, if you're just doing an actual play for funsies, you're not really looking for views or looking to grow, this video might not be for you, because this is going to be more tailored for those content creators who want to make actual play content and see some level of growth by doing it. Let's dive into my very first point, and this is going to be the most obvious difference between Critical Role and Dimension 20 and your other random YouTube actual plays that have like 20 views on YouTube, and it's going to be the production. Way too many small YouTubers and brand new YouTubers and content creators underestimate the importance of having good audio and good video. Audio being slightly more important, but video is also important. We are in 2026. There is some really great high quality content being made in all facets of spaces and niches. If you're playing on like a 480p laptop webcam with a laptop microphone, you are diminishing your chances of success exponentially. And thankfully, in 2026, technology is so much further along than it was even 5 years ago. You could find quality webcams and microphones for like $100 each. But if you have to split that between 5 or 6 people at the table, then that could be like $1,000 to $1,200. It can be easy if all the players can afford to buy their own gear, but if they can't, then you're gonna have to look at some kind of fundraising or just coming out of your own pocket. Okay, let's move on to some other topics within this production category that's not necessarily audio and video. So my second point under this is make it feel like a show where you can. Add intro cinematics, have music where you can. If you're editing it, then in post-production, add some sound effects to like immerse your people into the story. There are some great sites out there that you can use to license sound effects and music, so that way you don't have to worry about getting copyright claimed on your videos. You have the right to use them because you purchased them. But again, that's going to be another like 100-ish a year, if not a little more. Okay, next let's talk about the on-screen visuals. Too many small actual plays want to do the thing where you have these small little like webcams in the corner, and then the screen is a giant screen share of player sheets and dice and some Star Wars picture. But if you go and look at Dimension 20 and Critical Role, the cameras are focused on the players. The players are taking up nearly all of the screen, and that's because these TTRPG games that we love to play, they're player forward. It's all about the players. I'm not saying that you can't show a person's character sheet off. I'm just saying it's not important comparatively to seeing the reaction on a player's face when that moment drops in the story. Another area of production that you need to think about is character art. Unless you or one of your party members are able to draw relatively well, you might have to consider commissioning artwork. And again, none of these things are absolutely required to do an actual play and create content. But without some of these things, you are seriously hurting your chances of success. And one other tip underneath my production side of things is potentially look into a podcast recording website such as like Boomcaster. That's what we use. The video is not sponsored, by the way. These sites can come with their own level of headaches and other problems that might arise, but none of those problems even come close to undoing the peace of mind that you get from having secure video footage. If you record directly from your computer and your computer crashes, you might lose the recording. You could be recording off your computer and your software just randomly decides to stop recording in the middle of your session and you don't realize it until it's over. That's happened to me when I did a live stream with some guests. With sites like Boomcaster, which again is what we use, it records on each person's local device, their camera, but then it also records on their end. So if one person's internet goes out or something, you still have the footage. You are guaranteed to not lose footage, which is really important if you're playing a TTRPG, because you don't want to replay a session because the dice are going to be different. It's going to end completely differently than the first time around you had to play it. So anyway, that's everything under the production side of things. And thankfully, the production side of things is all the things where money is kind of involved. So let's talk about how this actually changes the game itself, the TTRPG experience. The biggest thing is that you're no longer going to be playing the game for yourselves, you're playing the game for an audience. So let's kind of break this down into what that maybe looks like and how that changes things. The first is, more than ever, you need to have a strong idea for that campaign. This idea needs to hook in any viewers that might be clicking on your video. For me, my idea was a criminal syndicate war in the aftermath of Return of the Jedi in the 1313 inspired underworld of Coruscant, and the players have to try to vie for power as this underworld war is going on. And then once you have your idea for the campaign, you need to have a strong introduction into the campaign. That first episode is going to be the most important, because if nobody clicks on episode 1 and watches through it, they're never going to get to other episodes. And you won't be able to please everybody. Not every single person who comes through and watches your video will continue past the first episode. I've had countless comments saying that Dark Underworld is the best actual play that they've ever watched. It is their absolute favorite. They love it. And even with that said, only about 25% of people continue on to episode 2. And then as the story and campaign is progressing, you need to be thinking about the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution of the story. You won't necessarily have all those pieces figured out at the beginning, but you should have some level of idea of where the story is going to go and how it's going to reach that pinnacle, the climax of the story. And because it's a TTRPG, things change. Player decisions can affect stuff. But again, it being a show that people are watching for, the characters, but also for the story, it needs to follow that storyline progression of a start, a middle, and an end, where it builds towards the big climax and then it resolves. And that gets into my third point about the story itself, which is arguably maybe the most important thing about the story, is that you need to have interesting and compelling characters, specifically the player characters. These player characters need to be fun to watch, fun to play, and fun to play with. Nobody wants to watch that stereotypical brooding sitting in the corner character that never trusts their party and keeps secrets and never opens up and kind of wants to do their own thing all the time. Like nobody wants to watch that. People want to watch, again, interesting and compelling characters, ones that have flaws, yes, but actually open up and have dialogue and talk. Characters need to have strong motivations, things that will tie directly into the story to have a character arc alongside the story arc. Where you're putting on a show, you need to make sure that these characters are three-dimensional. And a really, really important thing that is actually kind of something that we struggled with Dark Underworld for quite a bit. It's very, very important, and we made sure that we're fixing it for the next actual play, is party cohesion. GMs, you need to make sure that the player characters are going to be cohesive and work together with the story. So the first point under party cohesion is make sure that the players' motivations align with the story, and also that they align with each other. You want to make sure that the players are all able to move in the direction of the story without much friction. So in our actual play, Dark Underworld, and this section will have a little bit of spoilers, so if you're currently watching through our actual play, or if you're interested in watching our actual play, I'll put timestamps down below to the end of the spoiler parts. But if you've seen through the show, or if you don't care and you just want to know, continue on. So in Dark Underworld, one of our characters, Shay, which is the Twi'lek character played by my friend Lacey, he had the motivation at the very beginning of the story of survival. She just wanted to survive. But in a story that is geared towards taking on the criminal underworld and trying to be the top syndicate at the end of the day, doesn't really lean into survival and wanting to survive at all costs. Like, there are very big risks involved with that. And due to Shay not wanting to take these risks a lot of the times, it caused friction within the party and within the story and made it hard sometimes for the story to try to continue. Now, GMs, let's say that does happen. What can you do? Well, you can change their motivations through the story. So in one instance, again with Shay, in episode 13 or 14, somewhere around there of our 30 episode show, there was this massive like nuclear bomb that the players had to stop, and Shay wanted to survive and didn't want to risk trying to disarm it and dying. And so they left this bomb, and the bomb blew up like 1.2 billion people in the underworld of Coruscant. And this caused a whole episode of the players realizing that they can't just leave the people for the other syndicates to murder and abuse, and that if they want to make a real difference, that they have to take risks. Fast forward to episode 20, which is only 6 episodes later, Shay, because of her failure with the bomb, has had a change of motivation and ends up sacrificing herself to save the others in her party and in the Hutt's palace. And so now you have this character growth moment from episode 1 till episode 20 of seeing this character grow to be outside of herself. So motivations like that, they can serve the story really well. It's just, it caused a lot of problems between episodes 1 and, episodes probably like 15, 16, as Shay was working through those motivations and those feelings. Another thing with party cohesion is that if the party doesn't start with camaraderie, then the players should be moving their players towards being cohesive together, towards trusting and liking the rest of the party and getting along. That way they can focus on the story and it not feel regressive. This is something else that we kind of struggled with in Dark Underworld a little bit, because Mott, which is the Toydarian voiced by my buddy Joe, and Lacey's character Shay, they didn't really get along because they just had very different perspectives, and most of that came from Shay's motivations. But the other part of that came from Joe's character not trusting the rest of the party nearly quick enough. We were still having discussions about frustrations on Joe's character 8, 10, 19 episodes into the actual play. And so there's some level of headache there that you can avoid by just making sure that the player characters will be cohesive from the start. And if they're not cohesive at the literal start of the story, having a game plan for the, within the first 5 episodes or so, getting to be one unit. Okay, so the next thing to think about when you have an audience is pacing. The story should be paced well. Each session should accomplish something towards the bigger picture. Each story arc should help the characters achieve something or some goal. Even side quests should serve a purpose. Our story had a couple of side arcs, side stories that were, overarching and took multiple sessions to kind of get through, but each of those things served a larger purpose within the story. That could be gear that they need to achieve their goals. It could be, money to buy stuff that they need to achieve their goals. It could be something that directly harms or affects the bad guy or whatever they're fighting in some real and direct way. It's up to you GMs on whatever that is, but just every episode, every arc should serve a greater purpose towards the story. Another thing that helps pacing is if you're editing the actual play before you upload it, you can cut out the stuff that breaks the pacing. Mainly this is going to be silences, those moments between character 1 talking and then character 2 thinking for 8 seconds before they say what they want to say in character. But sometimes you might want to cut out larger chunks if it doesn't serve the story. To give some examples, in episode 1 of our actual play, there was a moment that you guys didn't see that Keenan, said he was going to go out to buy like food supplies and, laundry stuff, and it didn't serve the story whatsoever. And so that's about 5 minutes that I snipped out of the actual play entirely because it didn't serve any purpose. It's not Jeff's fault who played Keenan. That the thing he was doing didn't really amount to anything happening just due to the story and what happened. But nothing did come out of it. The viewers don't really need to see that. Another example, and again, spoilers, sorry for Dark Underworld. You can skip ahead if you want to skip over it. This is for episode 29, our part 1 of our finale. There was like a 20-minute argument where Mott wanted to crash a ship into a building, and the rest of the party and myself were like, it's a funny, neat idea, but it's not very practical for serving the goals of the story at this moment. I ended up cutting out like 75% of that conversation because, again, it didn't serve the story. I left in about 5 minutes of it to allow for Mott to fully explain his plan and what he wanted to do and have some dialogue around saying, yeah, let's go in a different direction. But keeping that extra 15 minutes of arguing in would not have served any purpose in the story. So let's move on. I know I said that you have to keep in mind not only players but an audience is as the biggest difference between an actual play and just playing at a private table. That said, the story is still primarily for the players, but there is a line that you have to toe between the players making decisions and keeping the story moving along for the audience. If the players spend too much time standing around trying to figure out what to do and you don't want to cut out 40 minutes of your actual play, the GMs should introduce something to help move the story along. But also, with that in mind, I want to be clear that still allow for good roleplay moments to happen. You don't want to rush like those moments in your story between the players, right? But there are certain times when the players are just arguing about if they want to go towards direction A, direction B, or neither, or both, or whatever, and it's just a really long conversation, and you as the GM just have to be like, hey guys, we need to make a decision. Either that or I'm going to do something to make a decision. Okay, so the next biggest way that this changes the game is like a movie or show. You and your players have to be willing to role play on camera. You have to be willing to really get into your characters and actually like act out your characters on camera, on the video for people to watch. And honestly, between everything, this is probably what I imagine is going to be the hardest part of putting together a successful actual play. I have friends that I play TTRPGs with on the regular that aren't a part of the channel, and I love to play with them. But that said, I probably wouldn't bring them on to an actual play because they don't really role play to the level that I think an actual play kind of needs. So what makes a good role player? You want to look for a player that, one, utilizes their dialogue in character. You know, there's a strong difference between the player that says, I walk up to the shopkeep and I ask him, you know, XYZ, and somebody who actually says, I walk up to the shopkeep, I ring the bell, and, you know, then just starts talking as their character is talking. A good role player also makes decisions that their character would actually make, and they can really get into the headspace of their character and play a compelling character and take those actions that feel believable. You also want a player that's going to be a cohesive player, like the player himself is cohesive with the rest of the party. You don't want somebody with a really big ego. You want a group of people that can be like, you know, after a session, the GM says, hey guys, like this is something that I think like the story kind of needs to go. This is a problem, and this is like a direction that we kind of need to take the show in. Just minor pushes kind of if things start to get off track, or if there are, you know, spotting potential problems beforehand, and be able to talk through those things with your players and them being cool with, you know, maybe slightly shifting, you know, the direction their character's heading in to better serve the story. An example of this is Mott. Mott was hitting a certain point 2/3 of the way through the actual play where we were seeing negative growth, and some negative growth can still be a good thing in a story, obviously. But it was, you know, we're getting into our final act of the actual play. It's time to start seeing the positive character growth coming out of your character. And so you want to have a player that is open to those suggestions and is willing to do what it takes to serve the larger story. And I know I said that you want players who can act as their players. That said, you don't need voice actors. Being a voice actor or being good at doing voices doesn't really matter. I mean, sure, it's a bonus if you got it, great. But if you just have people who know how to role play, are fun to role play with, and are compelling role players, that's really the most important thing. And, you know, this next point, as far as it being different from a normal TTRPG, might be a little controversial, but honestly, contractually obligate your players to show up each week on time, and spelled out in the contract needs to be for however long the actual play is discussed to potentially be. So for mine, I pretty much was like, you guys are contractually obligated for the entirety of 2025 to show up each week to play this game. Because if you've played this game before, you know that, you know, there are players who don't take it seriously. There are players who are constantly late. There are players you have to hound to get them to show up. Like we've all played with those players, right? So I'm not saying like sue your people if they don't show up, but getting them to sign some level of contract, it helps them be like, oh, this is serious. Like I'm making a serious commitment to something. And obviously, account for life. There are multiple instances where, somebody on our team or on our cast had a life emergency and we weren't able to record 1 week. Totally understandable. Account for, crap hitting the fan, for just life happening. But you want to make sure that that is not the normal. You want people that can show up for the duration of the entire actual play. And the last thing to make a successful actual play is going to be the marketing. So what's really important is the title and thumbnail. This super specifically for episode 1. You could have the highest quality production actual play with the best characters and the coolest idea for a story. And if nobody clicks on episode 1, if they're not compelled by the thumbnail and or the title, nobody will ever see it. And really, that goes with just YouTube advice in general is, titles and thumbnails are important. You need people to actually click on your videos to watch them. But episode 1 for an actual play is the most important, because after episode 1, if you've hooked them, if they're interested in your characters, they're interested in the story bits, they like your style, all the things align and they want to keep watching it, they likely will be going on to the next episode anyway, but you need people to get initially hooked on that first episode. So title and thumbnail are very important. The next thing is you want to share that actual play with the game's community online. A great place for this is Reddit, since you can actually go to a specific fandom or TTRPG's subreddit and say, hey, I'm doing this actual play. If you're interested, check it out, and give them some details about it. That can be a great way to get the word out. That said, do not spam. Please do not spam. If you're posting, honestly, do not post a new episode every week to the Reddit or wherever you're posting it. Like, share it once every 3 to 4 months. When you share it, be like, hey, I'm doing an actual play. Episode 1 is starting next week, or hey, I just dropped episode 1 last night. This is the story. This is what's going on. Feel free to check it out if you want to. And then in 3 or 4 months, maybe post again and be like, hey, we have the first 10 episodes out of our actual play. Yeah, you should go check it out. It's been really fun so far. People are really enjoying it. Give it a shot. Odds are, if people are watching your actual play, that they're probably subscribed already. They're probably going to see the new episode dropping on YouTube. Whereas you're just going to turn off the people that are just sick and tired of you seeing you post episode 1 today, episode 2 the next week, episode 3 the next week, episode 4 the next week, because nobody's going to start on episode 4, right? So you really just need to promote episode 1 and subsequent episodes in the same post just once every few months, just to try to see if you can get some fresh new eyes on your actual play. Another thing that you can do for marketing is to create some teaser videos. DaVinci Resolve is a free to use video editor. It's really robust. Play around with your video editing skills, create teaser videos, play around with Adobe Illustrator or Affinity. Affinity's free now because Canva bought it and made it free, I think. Play around with, social media posts. Try to just tell people through your social media platforms what you have going on, or with the right hashtags, with the right hook, or with, that just right Instagram reel, YouTube short, or TikTok. You'll get people interested in your actual play. And then once you get that initial viewing, then the YouTube algorithm will pick it up and start showing it to other people, as well as the people that really enjoyed it will tell word of mouth about their actual play. But yeah, those are my steps to doing a successful actual play. If you want to see the actual play that we actually put out, that a lot of people are saying they love it, it's their favorite one they've ever watched, which is deeply humbling and honoring, but it's awesome. And so if you want to check out what all these people are saying is really great, you can do that. There's gonna be a link in the description below, or at the end of the video I'll put a card up on the screen. Subscribe if you want to see our next actual play. Keep an eye out very soon for a announcement of some kind. A huge thank you to the Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. It's because of you guys that I'm able to do cool content like this one, or like our actual plays, and buy and purchase the equipment that we actually need to make it high quality and good. You are so appreciated. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too rambly, but I'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, and as always, may the force be with you.